Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Real Life Number 1, stories by Mark Zingarelli. There was no number 2 or number 3 or any other issues. It was the only one. This was published by Fantagraphics in 1990. And I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Zingarelli. Didn't do many comics in his career. He did a lot of art for magazines and books. He's got a very what's the word for it? Just a very clean style. It's nothing, no stylization at all. It's almost like the art that would be in the Utney Reader or something, as we can see by this cover. Like the graphics on this cover, the logo and this little drawing with the black. It looks very nice. You have a contents page. And we start off with the number 1 Cadillac fan. And this is an autobio tale. And so Mark Zingarelli at one point, this is from 1987, by the way, because this is a collection of stories. Some have appeared in other places. So at one point, Mark Zingarelli bought a 61 Cadillac. He was used to getting compliments about it. People would always just stop it, and say, wow, nice car. So one day he was at a bookstore. And the owner called him up. He says, who owns this 61 Cadillac out there? He thought somebody had scratched his car. It turned out it was this customer who asked the owner to find out who it was. And he's this weird guy who, he's got a 5 o'clock shadow and he smells bad. But he's like a total geek about Cadillacs. And he's just going on and on about all this knowledge and trivia about Cadillacs. And he says, do you mind if I sit inside or check out the interior? Because I suspect that model, it had 2 different interiors and I can't really see through the windows. So he kind of imposes on Mark Zingarelli. Mark Zingarelli is a nice guy, so he's like, okay, I guess so. And the guy gets in the car. He's he's loving it. And then at one point, he kind of just stops and just, for 30 seconds, as if he was in a trance, he's basically emotionally soaking up the feel of the car, almost like he's in a rapture. And Mark Zingarelli finally says, dude, I gotta go, okay? So he talks to the bookstore owner, and he's like, yeah, he's pretty harmless, that guy, but yeah, he's a weirdo. And then he keeps running into this guy all throughout town. And this guy keeps imposing on him. He's like, man, hey, can I get a lift? I would love to get a ride in your caddy. I'm just going up the street. He's actually going 2 blocks, but he just wants to ride in the caddy. So he does, and once again, he's kind of a weirdo. And he sees him all the time now. Sees him on the side of the road, and he offers him rides and stuff. And tells him all these weird stories about these kids picking on him, throwing gumdrops at him. And so then he even keeps saying hey man, we should hang out this Sunday. I would love if you would we could just drive around in your caddy, maybe go to this park. And Mark Zingarelli is really, he puts him off. He says, oh, this weekend I'm busy. But then finally he gives in. And he's surprised at himself. He's like, this is probably going to turn out shitty, but I'm going to go pick this guy up. And I guess this was supposed to be the first part of a 2-part story, because it says not quite the end. We don't really see what happens. Next, we have the Cockeyed Cook story. This is, I believe this was published in Weirdo. This is a great true crime story. I assume it's true crime. Maybe he made it all up. But it has enough detail that it has the ring of verisimilitude to it. So it's about this guy, William Edward Cook. He grew up poor. He was an orphan at a very young age. And he went into the foster care system. I guess he had this weird skin flap over his eye. A kindly doctor offered to pro bono do surgery on it, but it didn't really work. So he had this weird, almost monstrous, droopy eye. So it was really hard for him to get a job, and definitely hard for him to get a girlfriend. So he resorted to a life of petty crime. He ended up in juvie, and there he learned he gained a bitterness and hatred for authority. So when he got released, he swore he'd never be sent back. So in 1950, a motorist stopped to pick him up. He was hitchhiking. Billy pulls a gun on the guy, and he forced the guy into his trunk. Luckily, this guy somehow got out of his own trunk and kind of leaped out of the car. This is very lucky for him, because we'll see that Billy is he's a fucking wild man. So now he's in search of other prey. He sees a station wagon full of a family, two parents, the Mosser family, and their 3 children. I guess he flags them down, pulls a gun on the father, gets in the car, and for the next 24 hours, he makes Mr. Mosser drive him around, gives him aimless directions. At a gas station, Mr. Mosser tries to overpower Billy, but fails. So he's enraged. So he takes him to a lonely road, down a lonely road in Missouri, and he shot the whole family. He even shot the dog. They had a dog. And I'm pretty sure, guys, that these 2 pages are flipped. So Cook abandoned the Mosser car, and meanwhile, the sheriffs have discovered the bloodstained car. They haven't found the bodies yet, because he put them in a mine, some abandoned mine. The gas station attendant tells them about the little scuffle they had, and then it's pretty dumb. Billy has left a receipt at the scene of the crime, a crumpled receipt for a handgun, so they know his name. So the manhunt begins for Billy. A deputy actually finds him, but unfortunately, Billy turns the tables on him. He forces him to drive deep into the desert. And then, strangely enough, he just leaves him out there. He doesn't kill him. So he abandons the cruiser. It's way too hot, you know. It's easy to identify. And so he forces himself on another hapless motorist. Some guy stops, slows down for him, shoots this guy in the chest, and just throws him in the middle of the road. See how his art is just very, very matter of fact. But it's really it's very skillful. I'm sorry, it's very well done, I meant to say. And very skillful. But it's a little, maybe dull, you could say. But I think for these kind of stories, just these matter of fact, either autobio or true crime, it's very effective. It's kind of perfect for this type of story. Oh, that's the page we already looked at, because it's out of order. And so he heads to Mexico, because he knows the cops are onto him. It's weird. It says he has a vague plan to buy a woman and smuggle her back into the States. I didn't know that you could buy a woman in Mexico. So he tries to make some alibi that, I was so drunk, I don't even remember the last 3 days. But they're like, fuck, you're an idiot, no. So he's tried for the murders. They finally found the Mosser family in that mine, and they put him to the gas chamber. Defiant and bitter to the end, these were his final words: "I hate everybody's guts." Man, what an ornery cuss. So now we have a Close Call, which is a Mark Zingarelli illustrating a Dennis P. Eichhorn autobiography story. Now, there's a lot of bad autobio out there. I probably talked about this before, but Dennis P. Eichhorn, his real stuff, his stuff is great because this guy lived a life. Dennis P. Eichhorn has hundreds of great stories, crazy stories. So this is Dennis P. Eichhorn telling a story about when he was a younger man, when he wore younger man's clothes. He was the manager of a tavern / pool room. At the time, it was in Santa Cruz. At the time, Santa Cruz was the murder capital of California. Hundreds of young women were just disappearing all the time. There was always posters on the telephone poles of like, have you seen this woman? Missing women posters. So I guess it was a pretty great job. He got laid a lot, free drugs and drinks. But there was this one woman that caught his eye. She came in every day about noon for a beer. Then she'd buy a six-pack and walk over to the beach for a few hours. Later, she'd return with a male companion, usually middle-aged. They'd have a few beers together, and then she'd leave. Sometimes she'd wink at him. So he figured out, okay, this woman's a hooker. She's a sex worker, I should say. And she noticed, too, that during the daytime, she would hang out with these two kind of hippie dudes. And I think they operated a head shop. So he tells this weird story how some food distributor said, hey, man, you want some free candy? I've got some Russell Stover mints that are past due, past dates. They're stale. But you can have as many as you want. So he basically just thought it was funny to take all these boxes of mints. He just basically made a giant, covered up his wall with them as if they were bricks. He thought it looked nice. So then a few days later, the sex worker strikes up a conversation with him. He takes her to her apartment. She says, oh my God, I love Russell Stover mints. He says, go ahead, take some. She says, how much can I have? He says, all you want. And she says, I want it all then. So I guess it took a while. They carried all 400 boxes of the candy out to her car and loaded it. She could barely squeeze in the car. She says, oh, come on over to my trailer sometimes. We'll party. He kind of begs off. He's like, oh, I got to get back to work. But he's thinking, Christ, what a greedy bitch. So it kind of turns him off that this woman is kind of greedy. So then a few months later, Linda was arrested. Linda's the name of the sex worker. The police arrested her friends. The two brothers who ran the head shop. They were brothers. They were charged with the murders of many young women. And Linda was arrested as an accomplice. Look at this panel right here. If you guys ever read Black Hole, the end papers, this looks so much like Charles Burns. He loves to do stuff like this. Just show detritus, laying on a desk or on the ground. So when they went to Linda's house, they found monies, drugs, and some personal effects of the victims. They dig up the ground beneath the trailer, her trailer. They found bodies there, all these middle-aged men, but no corpses of women. So I guess Linda had been luring those old middle-aged men back to her trailer where she killed them. She would kill them and rob them. The brothers would help her to bury them, and in return, she would find young runaways so they could torture and murder them. I guess they were Satanists. So she would lure young runaways and be like, hey, you want to hang out? And take them to the brothers' place where they'd be killed. But there was one thing that puzzled the police. They couldn't figure out when they looked at Linda's trailer, when they were investigating. They said, look at all this fucking candy. So she had all those Russell Stover mints. And the police were just baffled. So the next story is electric chair. I think this was also... Oh, actually, this previous story, I think, was from the Northwest Extra, Dennis P. Eichhorn's newspaper. This next one is the electric chair. It's kind of a history of the electric chair. So this is the story of the first time it was used. So the electric chair just come out. I don't think there's a year here. And look at this illustration. This is pretty damn nice. Every little, the way he shades this wall. So I guess they tried it out on this guy, William Kembler, a condemned murderer. And he kind of illustrates the whole process of how they hook up the electrodes. Man, that's a great face. Look at that. Almost like Spain Rodriguez. Actually, very much like Spain Rodriguez. And so I guess it didn't work. They pumped 1,000 volts through him. And it looked like he was dead. But all of a sudden, Kembler suddenly heaved and strained against the straps. Of course, everyone was just like, holy shit, fuck. They almost had a heart attack. He was still alive. So the executioner decided to try again. And this time I think he did it for a full 70 seconds. It didn't just kill William Kembler. A lot of the witnesses became sick because basically he cooked him to death. It was just so much electricity. The autopsy says the flesh is similar to well-done beef. It's carbonized his muscle groups. Look at this. He's like a charcoal briquette. Ugh. So once the news of this got out, a lot of people across the country started denouncing the electric chair as torturous and inhumane. So we have an epilogue here. I guess the news of this reached the king of Abyssinia, which is now called Ethiopia. So the emperor wanted he ordered 3 of these chairs. And I guess at the time, they had a very primitive form of capital punishment and capital punishment. Like if you were caught stealing, it'd sever your hand. Now, if you were, if you killed someone, even if it was an accident, your closest relative would be made to perform a public disembowelment of you. Just very barbaric. Like, the poor relative, why does he have to do that shit? He didn't do anything wrong. So the electric chairs finally came, and I guess he didn't think it through, the emperor, because there was no electricity in Ethiopia at the time. There's none anywhere. They had no electricity. So he ended up using one of the chairs as his new throne. He wanted to get some use out of it. I wonder how much of this is true. I really like this autobio story. It's called August de Prima's Miracle Meats. It's a story of when Mark Zingarelli was a youngster, and his mom every Sunday would make a delicious pasta with a great sauce. And every week he'd ride his bike and pick up the sweet and hot Italian sausages. And this guy, Augie, Augustus de Primo, everyone loved him. He was very friendly. He had a sister who was darkly beautiful, he describes her as. Her name was Veronica. And he does draw her very beautifully. So everyone would hang out there. It was just a hangout. All the old Italian men in the town would talk about politics or whatever, smoke weird little cigars. And then they'd play bocce. I guess there was an immaculately maintained clay court behind Augie's shop. So the years pass on, and he would even take his girlfriends in to meet him. It was almost like they were family to him. But even though everyone loved hanging out at Augie's shop, they'd always be arguing, the sister and the brother. He acted like a father more than a brother. He'd always be like, I don't like you going out with that boy. And she'd be like, I'm 20 years old, you can't tell me what to do. But then it got really bad when she met this really serious guy. I guess he was this big man on campus type. All state honors in wrestling and football. His name was Pete. And they really seemed to be hitting it off. So she was dating him, going out with him a lot. And this really pissed off Augie. He's like, you go out with him too much. And see, I can do that accent. I'm Italian. 3 times a week, is it too much? And so I guess Veronica finally got fed up and she ran off with Big Pete. And apparently they didn't really run far. They were still in town. She just didn't go back to the shop because she worked there. I didn't mention that. She worked with Augie and they lived together. And he wouldn't even utter her name at first. When people would ask about her, he'd pretend he didn't know what they were talking about. He tried to hire another cashier, but he was so... He would always scare them away. They'd leave in tears because of his incessant badgering. So even though everyone liked Augie, he sounds like a real pain in the ass. I really like this art. It's just so like... I don't know, it looks like Charles Burns, old romance comics. It's got that like super classic style. And then one day Augie actually got emotional with Mark's mother because she was a regular there. And he's all like, well, maybe you cannot tell me. You see my Ronnie, how's it come she no talk to me? What can I do? And she's just like, oh, she just needs some space. She'll come around. You'll see. And the next few months are not good for Augie. He stopped shaving, he stopped smiling, and wasn't as affable anymore and friendly. And Mark says that he didn't enjoy going there anymore. Augie became bad-tempered and brusque with all the customers. Everyone else stopped going too, or didn't like going as much. And I guess a week later, or pretty soon after this, they found him in his trailer. He'd stabbed himself in the heart. Kind of like, almost like a samurai. And Mark says he saw Ronnie and Pete at the funeral, but he just felt weird talking to him. So for 2 years, Miracle Meat stood empty. Ronnie didn't even want to sell the fixtures. She just, I guess, wanted it to just rot. And so it became vandalized, became more dilapidated, and the shop became an awful reminder to everyone. Who knew Augie and Ronnie? Mark Zingarelli goes away to school. When he comes home for spring break, he noticed that it was gone. They bulldozed it. And Ronnie and Pete moved to California. And I guess they built a 7-Eleven on the spot. And Mark Zingarelli claims he's never stepped foot inside. I guess in protest to fate. Really good story. I wonder how much... I don't even know if it's true. I think it is, though, because it is... This character is Mark Zingarelli. But who knows, you know. It's his prerogative to make up stuff, even though it's supposedly autobiographical. So here's Hookman, Urban Folktales Retold by Mark Zingarelli. This is that classic story you probably heard around the campfire when you were a kid. It was always recounted from your best friend's cousin's concubine told the story. So apparently there's this couple. They go out to Lover's Lane to make out. Look at that. That's like a Liechtenstein panel. I think it is actually that famous panel. On the radio, all of a sudden they announce, they're like, we're interrupting this program. A dangerous rapist and murderer has escaped from the mental institution. He's easily identified by a hook where his right hand should be. And the woman hears a sound at her door, a little scratching. And she's like, get me out of here right now. And he's just like, Barb, fine, we're going. He just thinks she's being hysterical. But of course, when they get the girl home and he goes out to open her door, there's a bloody, stumpy hook on his car door. I heard that when I was a little kid too. It's weird how those ghost stories, you know, those kind of urban legends, how they just travel. I mean, I don't remember ever reading this or seeing a movie about this, but people I know who grew up in Alaska heard the same story. And I grew up in New York. People in Hawaii, people in Florida. Somehow there was this pipeline, a psychic pipeline, where every kid knew these bad jokes, knew these urban legends, and these ghost stories. Even though it's not like they were published. So it's kind of interesting how that works. But a fun page. And that's it for Real Life #1. I wish there was more of these. I'm pretty sure Mark Zingarelli drew other short stories, other comics, but I just don't know where they are. In fact, I'm pretty sure I have some of his stuff in other anthologies. In fact, I'm almost positive I do. I just can't remember where right now. But really fun stuff, really good autobio or just bio and history. And kind of reminds me of David Collier, how, some of his comics are basically just like reading a good article. He's like that one about the murderer guy. He's just telling you the facts, some interesting story, the real life story, which are fun. I guess in David Collier's case, I don't really dig it as much because his art isn't my favorite. But I think the art in this one sells it. And the stories are maybe better, better told. They don't go off as many asides as David Collier does. They're more dramatic. So there you go, guys. Real Life #1. Stories by Mark Zingarelli. Hope you enjoyed looking at it, and I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.